So we're beginning in line 174, so if we could make that up about right here, that would be great. Aeneas and his men have obviously made landfall, and the place where they have made landfall is going to be at a nice, calm, smooth harbor. And what Virgil has just done in these lines previous is that he has described in great detail, almost like an ekphrasis, which is a literary description, usually of a work of art, but in this instance, that work of art is the landscape, a topological or locational description of this harbor to where the ships that Aeneas has are all going to be, of course, finding their way. Aeneas originally had 20 ships, all filled with his men, but as he makes this safe harbor with the ships limping, really just limping in to the calm waters, he has only 7. Now he knows that one is a goner. That would be the ship that he himself saw swallowed in the whirlpool, which means that that leaves 12 out there that he doesn't know what their situation is. And as soon as he emerges, we see 2 leaders truly act in that capacity. Aeneas and his right-hand man, his best buddy, named Achates, or in English, Achates, as it were. So, they put ponent, those Trojans did, their tabentes artus. Artus, the 4th declension word, modified by tabentes, their limbs, their arms and legs, essentially. And this is either dripping or melting with salt, and this is a part of the previous lines that I read and have made a recording of, on the shore. And so, in line 174, we see the behavior of Achates. So, ac primum. Together that means as soon as. So, as soon as, or and first, Achates executed. Now that is a perfect, excudo, excudere, excudi, the long U tells us the perfect stem, and it is that he cut out, or struck out, a scintillum. The English word scintillating comes from this, and it is the word that means a spark. He struck out a spark by, with, because of, from, in, on, at, the flint. That's where we get the word silicon. That, of course, comes from flint. So, a spark with the flint, or from the flint, you're rubbing it together to make the fire. Hue, and he undertook, he captured, capio capere capi captus, with sub on the front of it. And he captured, he undertook an ignem, that's your accusative direct object, the fire, foliis, which of course is where we get the word foliage, from or with the leaves. So he's gathering up leaves, tinder as it were, he's making a fire. And he dated, do, dari, dati, datus. He gave a dry nutrients, arida, arid, and nutrimenta, obviously nutrients, all around. And so he's putting the dry kindling, the dry, or like tinder is what it's called, that you begin the fire with. And he rapio, rapere, rapui, another perfect verb. He grabbed a flame in the kindling, and that's what fomite is. And so we see the first thing that he's going to do. Now, why is Achates making a fire? Well, obviously, one, they are probably cold and wet, and so they're going to dry off. Another reason why a fire is that probably that they're going to need to obviously eat, to cook. But thirdly, for a fire, all of their stuff is soaked, and they're going to then need to obviously dry that out. Not only themselves, but their clothes and all sorts of things like that. So if we put 177 about right here, that would be good. And so in 177, tum cererim corruptam. Oh, by the way, so that you know, look over here, swallows, is that if I've been using this, to be able to actually control it, you need to make the mouse hit the little mouse icon that is there. So now if you can scroll it please, 177, put it about right here. Uh-oh, just use the scroll wheel.
It wasn't working.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think it was because of the way that it wasn't touched onto the mouse. That's good. So, tomb is where we begin. 177 there. And so then, the ones fessi. This is the exact same as de fessi. It's the tired ones. And they are tired, rearum. Tired of things. Remember that rearum comes from, if you can see over here, and at this point, I would get you to say it, everybody, raise rei, but you can do it behind your muted microphones if you so want. It means things, situations, whatever's, essentially, you can translate it. And so they are tired of things. We would say the guy's over it, as it were, when you are over something. And they are over this, kind of like I am over the pandemic. I am over internet problem. I am over remote learning. I am Fessus, singular, rerum. Are y'all Fessi, rerum with me? Yes, that's what the Aeneans are. They expedient. They make ready. That's where we get the word expedient. They make ready, and what they make ready is the Carrarium. Now this is the personified Ceres, who remember is the Roman goddess of grain. And so essentially she represents grain in and of itself. So then the guy's tired of things, they make ready the Ceres, the grain having been corrupted, having been ruined by the waves, because, boys and girls, what you do with that grain is that you grind it up and you make flour. And you can't grind up wet grain, because what will you get when you grind up wet grain? Not flour. It'll be paste and goop, and it will mold and mildew, and it's unusable. So, the grain, having been ruined, corrupted by the waves, and, that que there, they also, the ones tired of things, make ready the Cerealian weapons. Now, what are Cerealian weapons? They are weapons associated with Ceres. Well, Ceres isn't a war goddess. She's the goddess of grain. And so the Cerealian weapons, this is just an epic way of saying silverware. You know, pots and pans and cookware. It's the Cerealian weapons. And they prepare They prepare torrere, to toast, to cook. Toast is better, I think. They prepare to toast those fruges. Now previously we referred to it as grains, but here they're referred to as fruits. Frugus. And so the fruits are the grains themselves. Those fruits, having been recovered, having been received, recipio recipere, so they get the grain, they are kind of like, pushing it all together, getting it all ready. So they prepare both to toast it, those grains, those fruits having been recovered, and they prepare to frangere. Frango, frangere, fregi, fractus. To break it, to grind it with a rock. Oh, and I forgot, to toast it with the flames. So they get the grain, they're going to dry it out, and then they're going to grind it up. And Suavis, what are they making by drying it out and grinding up?
Flour.
Flour is exactly right. Bread. It is the #1 sustainer of the ancient world. And why bread? Because you can keep grain for a long time. Think about you have flour in your pantry at home. That, of course, is probably really, really old. It is for me. Go ahead. Is your hand up, Liza? I can't. I've got myself on speaker view, and so just interrupt me by all means. What do you got?
Oh, okay. So I'm kind of confused. Why is it talking about the making of flour?
Because the men have made landfall, and they've got to eat. And so he's describing the immediate things. Think about it. If you are in a shipwreck with, let's say, our class, like, what is the first thing we're going to do if we end up stranded on an island? You got to find food. And their food has been ruined. It's either tossed overboard in the storm and the bottom of the ocean, but the stuff that they can recover, they're going to start making food. And that's what we're describing here as to why we're making flour, because they're about to cook bread. Do you understand? All right. 180. And if you'd scroll a little bit, please. The wheel should work. There it is. That's good. Right there. Perfect. So, Aeneid. So we got the buddy, Achates, is making a fire. We know what they're going to do with the fire. They're going to dry out the grain. They're going to start grinding the grain. They're going to start making bread. Got to feed people. And that's lasts for a long time. That's the #1 thing you want. If we go on a trip, if we are on a trek, let's say that we have to walk to California, the Latin class, we together, and I say, let's pack some food. What am I not packing? Fresh fruits. Why? It's going to go bad. What do you want to pack? You want to pack canned goods or grain, rice. Rice lasts forever. And it stays dry, you cook it, and it's sustaining. So, Antalia, first word, chapter 10, Ecce Romani. Meanwhile, Aeneas climbs, it's the conscendo, it's the same as ascendo, and he climbs a crag. How many times have we already seen the word crag? Both Rupus and Scopulus. He climbs a crag. Now what's the purpose of him climbing up to the top of a hill or top of a crag? And he seeks, he looks for, chapter 5, Ecce Romani, peto petere, petivi petitus. He seeks the whole, all the view. And he seeks that view widely, latus aum means wide, with the e it becomes an adverb, on the sea. Remember, so many words for sea does Virgil use. This one, pelagus, it's where we get archipelago, or the sharks that swim in the open ocean are the pelagic sharks. So he seeks a view widely on the sea. Above the sea, by, with, because of, from, in, on, at. So he's going to sea, and probably, what do you think he's looking for, Swamis? Swamis, what do you think he's looking for?
Well, the word deer is written here, so I'm assuming like animals.
Not first. He will see that, but remember, 20 ships total. He knows one's at the bottom of the ocean, and he's only got 7. And since he's only got 7, he's probably looking for the other 12 ships. And that's exactly what it says. He does this if he, and look, it's the conditional. So we've got to see what kind of verb in the if clause. Does anybody remember the name for the if clause?
Protasis.
Yeah! It's the protasis. And when you see a present subjunctive as the verb of our if clause, then essentially, remember, it is a future less vivid. Tomorrow, I am not going to punch Formosus in the throat. I'm going to wait till Monday when he gets here. But if I should punch him in the throat Monday in the future when he gets here, I'm making this up, it's contrary to fact, then he would. So if he should subjunctive, and remember, little hearts all around EA in the present subjunctive, that's the only thing it can be. I put like X hate signs around the vowel E, because you don't know, and the vowel A, you don't know. So you got to know the conjugation. But here it's clear, it's present subjunctive. If he should see nisi numine, all the ollies fall away. Now, by itself as a pronoun, it would mean anybody or somebody. But since it is modifying Anthea. Now, the reason why Anthea looks weird like that, it's a Greek name. And that is the accusative, singular, Greek form of his name. And so very often in poetry we see that when we have people's names, they are going to often, if they are Greeks, have a Greek form to it. Aeneas is a Greek name. And Aeneas himself, in his declension in Greek, whenever you write his name in the accusative, it's actually I-name-on. Do you see that A-N? For his Greek form, his accusative is an A-N ending. Whereas over here, it is Anthea, and it's modified by Quim. So if he should see any Antheus. Now what does that mean if he should see any Antheus? Not like any person named Antheus. It means like any remnant of Antheus, any trace of Antheus. Or, Antheus, any Antheus, the one having been thrown about by the ablative wind, and if he should see the Phrygian biremes. Phrygia is the area in Asia Minor that Troy is right near, and so therefore that is indeed why they are Phrygian biremes. Biremes are merely indicating the kind of boats they are, with 2 sets of oars. Or if he should see Capus, which is another guy, or if he should see the weapons of Caicus. And so we have as the object, and I'll circle them in red, of Videat, the Antheus guy. We have as object number 2 the Phrygian biremes, object number 3 Capus, and object number 4 the weapons of Caicus. So he's looking for all of his friends, some of whom actually get named by name that you have there. And those weapons of Caicus, where? On the lofty, the high poop decks. Remember, poopus is the poop deck. That is the top deck of the ship. And again, it is metonymy in that the deck represents the ship as a whole, and a specific type of metonymy, which is, of course, called, anybody remember? No?
Oh,
Synecdoche, in which a part represents the whole. Nice wheels. See, I saw some of your cars yesterday. Y'all were getting your licenses. And so if I were to lean into you and say, hey, nice wheels, I am not talking about your wheels. The whole wheels represent the car, or the car represents, or the wheels represent the whole car. And again, Kelsey's high or lofty. So he's looking to see how his buddies have fared. And does he see them? Well, in the next line it tells us no. He prospicit. He sees nalem nalam, no ship in his sight. Conspectu. But what does he see? He sees tres cervos, 3 deer. That is the word for deer, cervus. And what kind of deer are they? Errantes deer. Wandering, errare, on the shore. So, Suavis, why do you think he's interested with these deer? Say it again? He's probably hungry. They've got bread, but I don't know if y'all are this way, but if my wife says, oh, I've got this special meal for us tonight, bread, I would start looking like, is there anything in the bread? Something I could put between the bread, maybe? My father was always this way. He never considered it to be a meal unless there was meat. I'm less like that. I can eat vegetarian meals, but you need some meat to go along with it. And so, again, in the ancient world, you don't go down to the ingles. You go to the forest, to the farm, as it were, and you get the animal. And remember, in Ecce 2, when Sudeless went out to go buy the pig, you got to buy a live pig, because they don't have refrigerators to put it in there. So that's exactly what he sees. He sees dinner walking around. So, the tota armenta, the whole herd, implying these deer, the whole herd. And this is a deponent verb, and I'll write it up here. Hopefully you can see it, maybe right here. So it is, of course, at home, behind your silence of your microphone, you are saying it with me. Sequor, sequi, secutusum, and even though it looks passive, arbistum intur, it translates actively, it means to follow. And the whole herd follow these, and the these that are there refer to the 3 deer. They must be the leaders of the herd. They follow them a tergo. Tergum tergi is the back or the rear, and so they follow them from the rear, and the longum agmen. Remember, agmen is the word for like a battle line. And here it's just talking about the long line of the deer that are walking along. Herds very often walk in following single file, sometimes even. And so the long line, pascitur, from that chapter in Ecce in which Sudeless did indeed buy the pig, it means to feed or to pasture. Remember, pasco, pascere, pavi, pastus. And that whole long line, it feeds or is fed, another example of the middle voice, through the valleys. And so, not only do you have the 3 deer, you've got the whole herd that is coming along with them. So, if you put line 187 about right here and scrolling, that would be good. Excellent. So, this is one of my favorite sections of all of Book 1. I don't know why I like it, but I just do. So, constituent, or constitute, I'm sorry, it means to take up a position. And it's perfect tense. So he, meaning Aeneas, our subject, took up a position here. So he's right there in this kind of view, kind of like, I don't know if your relatives, any of them hunt deer, which is a season that is actually underway, I think, right now, deer hunting season. But where do people go in order to hunt deer? Suavis, do you know? They go up in trees. They climb up in trees, deer stands, as it were, because you don't want them to see you. Deer never look up, and so therefore it gives you an advantage. Remember that Aeneas is on top of this crag that he has climbed. So he took up a position here, que, and he grabbed rapio rabere with a colon on the front of it, which turns that rapio a into the other vowel I. And he grabbed it, he seized the celeres sagittas, and que the arcum. Now the arcum is the arch, but remember, as an arch, it can also be, oh, look at my drawing, not too bad, a bow. That, as you can see, would be what we have represented here. And so, he grabbed it, or grabbed, I suppose, you don't have to say grabbed it, the bow and the swift arrows in the night sky. The constellation Sagittarius is the arrow man. And so a sagitta is an arrow. And they are fast arrows. And he grabs them with his hand. Now, what is this bow? What are these arrows? They are the tela. So tela here, which comes from telum, teli. Now we translate armum, army, or arma, plural, as arms, but arma is going to be defensive arms, like what you would obviously have as a shield and your armor. Telum, on the other hand, is offensive weapons, that what you would obviously strike out. So, what is the bow? What is the sagita? As an appositive, the weapons, and they are the weapons which fidus achates. Achates very often goes by this particular epithet. Remember that an epithet, I don't know if you can quite make that out, but it's going to be a descriptor. It's going to be kind of like a thing, a tagline. Remember that Juno was called Savage Juno, or in the Iliad, it is Hector, the breaker of horses. The tagline for Aeneas, most famously, is Pius, pious Aeneas, doing right Aeneas. And here, you get to see why Achates is seen as the best friend of Aeneas. He is faithful Achates. So, he grabbed the bow and the swift arrows. Repeating what those are as an appositive. The weapons which faithful Achates was wearing or carrying along, functionally like a squire would be to a knight. Que, and after he grabbed that stuff, I don't know why it keeps getting goofy. And que, we gotta go find a verb, there it is. Sterno, sternere, stravi, stratus. Let me write that for you. And you're going to see it again. Sterno, sternere, stravi, stratus. Now if you remember what a stratum, strati is, it is a covering or layer. And so this verb means literally to lay low or to lay out. And so again, for Moses, this is completely made up. But if I should, on Monday, punch you in the throat, I would lay you out. Wapow. And that's exactly what this is going to mean as in slay. So, and he lays low first, that's indicating when. And whom or what does he lay low? The ductores ipsos, the leaders themselves. These would be the first 3 deer that he had seen. And what kind of leaders are they? They're the ones carrying, present active participle again, and carrying their capita alta. Their heads, caput capitis, high. And so they're walking around with their heads all up in the air, carrying their heads high, their heads with their arboreal, tree-like horns. And so apparently they have huge racks of antlers on them. And so he lays low, the leaders themselves, carrying their heads high with tree-like horns. Remember, the fourth declension word, one of only 2 that are neuter that you need to know, is cornu, cornus, and genu, genus. Oh, wait. Let's see if I am Johnny on the spot with that. And boom, there it is. Oh my glory, and there it is. So, here you can see it. Cornu, cornus, and here it is, cornulus. The word for knee, and the word for, of course, horn, as it were. So, continuing on, there it is. Tomb. So, first he kills the leaders themselves. Then, there it is, and miskeo miskere. It's an E. You've got to ask yourself the question, is it a first conjugation? Because if it is, we fear giant liar. Is it a second conjugation? Because if it is, it's a present tense indicative. Is it a third conjugation? Because if it is, that would make it a future. Well, listen to the principal parts. Miskeo, miskere. So what conjugation is it, Swallows? Second is exactly right. He mixes together, as a statement of fact, right now. He mixes the crowd, that is a neuter word of the third declension. That's why the accusative it has what looks like a US ending, but it's no ending at all. And he mixes together the whole mob. Really, a vulgus and a turbom are the same thing. But he mixes them together. He against. Oh, Solstice, you have a question? Yes! No. You just turned your mic off by accident. Is that correct? No? Maybe?
It's like I'm confused, but I don't know what to ask.
Oh, what are you confused about? I'm here to answer.
It's how you realize these things.
What does he say?
Like, how do you know, I guess, where to go from each thing?
Oh, I see.
Like how
It is tough.
Yeah.
Because in poetry especially, the word order is much more bungled because of the necessity due to the rhythm. Right now, you are bad at it. Very, very bad at it. But what will happen is that over time, you will get better. And most especially when you are here in person, when I make you, and we will be going much slower than what I am now, when I make you think about what's next and what form it is and so forth and so on, it'll get infinitely better. Right now, I'm doing it all for you. And it's like me teaching you how to juggle by simply juggling for you. You will not be able to juggle by watching me juggle. You can only juggle when you juggle. That's why what Walain said he does, which is to watch my videos and then try to do it on his own, and then repeatedly do that again and again. That's why I beg you. That's why I send you these text messages almost every day. Please, get yourself a snack. Get yourself a comfortable area and just watch the video, because the repetition of just watching will help with the juggling, but it truly won't let you juggle unless you actually do it. And you will be able to do it when you are here every day in class, because I'm going to engage you just like I did in Latin 1 and 2. Do you understand what I'm saying, Salse?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Alright, so then he mixes together the crowd and the whole mob, he, being modified by the present active participle again, driving them with his weapons, remember, the offensive weapons, nemora inter frondea, in between the leafy, like on a fern, has fronds, or palm frond, and thus frondeus means leafy. Nemora is the word that comes from nemus, so nemoris. And remember, if it is a third declension that has a us in the nominative, it'll be neuter, and thus the accusative plural object of inter is ending with an a, in between the leafy fronds. Now, nec obstitit. He did not, and instead of obstitit, what if it were desistit? You would know what it means then. Stop. He did not desist, but it means essentially the same thing with the ob. And he did not stop. And then here, what we have is prius and quam. Usually prius quam is one singular word. But when an author splits it apart, it is a particular literary device, particular, that is called tmesis. And that is from the Greek word that merely means cut. That's why when you have, let's say, your appendix cut out, it's an appendectomy. Or your tonsils cut out, it's a tonsillectomy. And of course, what are the things that you cannot cut? Atoms, the smallest unit. Now, of course, in modern science, we've split that again, but originally, atoms were what we knew was the smallest unit and could not be cut. But splitting the atom, it was a really big deal, because now we have the power to kill everybody on Earth at the same time. Splitting the atom, nevertheless. So, he did not stop, and this word has been cut apart, tmesis, and it means before or until. He does not stop until he, as a victor, he as a winner, merely and a positive of our subject he, fundo fundere. Listen to how I said that. Fundo fundere. Third conjugation. We fear a giant liar. And it merely is subjunctive because prius quam makes it be subjunctive. It's a prius quam clause. You can just translate it normally. He does not, or he did not stop before or until, as the victor, he pours out, remember fundo fundere fudi fusis, he pours out 7 huge bodies, locative case, on the ground. Remember, cities, towns, small islands. The word for countryside, rus ruris. The word for house, domus domi. And the word for ground, humus humi, can be expressed in the locative case to show location. He pours out the 7 huge bodies on the ground, meaning that he has killed 7 deers. And he aiquets. Again, aiquare. We fear giant liar because of the prius quam clause. And he did not stop until he equals, present tense, the number of bodies that he's killed with the ships. So why does he kill 7 deer? Because he's got 7 ships. 1 deer per ship. And that way we see him acting as a leader. And how is this acting like a leader? First thing he does, he shows concern, checks out the condition of his men. He wants to know where they are. He goes and looks for them. If he can see Capys, if he can see the arms of Caicus, if he can see anything of Amphius, then he's concerned about the men he does know their location, whereabouts. And that is, he's going to obviously, then at this point, make it to where he can feed them, as it were. So, line 194, from here, from this point,
I was gonna scoot it up.
oh yes, scoot it up by all means, scoot, scroll. Very good. And I think I'll plow all the way through 209, and that'll be it for today. And from here, he seeks the port. Remember, that's where all the ships had limped in. It was described by Virgil. And partitur. I'll be honest, I don't know if this is a deponent verb or not, and that's bad by me, but let's say it is not. And it is parted out. It is divided out. If it is a deponent verb, I will fix that later. And it is divided out into all of the comrades, all of the allies, all of the friends, as it were. So I don't know if it is deponent or not. If it is deponent, he divides it. If it is not, it is divided. So I don't know which one.
There is a deponent version of it.
Okay, so this verb particularly has both a non-deponent verb and a deponent version. So I'm good to go either way. So either one is perfectly fine. All right, so let's finish up, and I should be done in just a few more minutes. So 195 to 209, and we'll be done. We then are going to skip ahead to line 418, and that's where we will begin in Monday, most likely. Go ahead, Suavis.
Why was fun that, not superlative.
Subjunctive?
Yes.
Because priusquam.
Why don't we translate it subjunctive?
Because when it is in a subordinate clause, the subjunctive is a different expression in English at all. It's the same as what we would say for indicative, but it's implying something to us. And I don't know if you remember the doom clause that when it means until, and then donec also requires it to mean until, and then there was a third word as well. Well, priusquam is exactly like that. He did not stop until he does do this. He did not stop until he does do that. It's an until clause. Do you see? The word until, in and of itself, indicates non-specificity, not statement of fact. Do you see? I will not stop teaching until I get 30 years in. Now, do I have 30 years in? No. And so since that is made up, it does a clause that begins with the word until to have a subjunctive verb. Do you see? But our expression of it in English is the same as a statement of fact indicative. Okay, so continue on. Great question, though. I appreciate that. And if y'all have questions online, unmute yourselves. I cannot wait to see you in person on Monday. You have no idea. All right. Our subject is heros. Now, the nominative is heros. It's borrowed from Greek. You know what the genitive looks like? I kid you not. Heros. And why does it look weird like that? It is a third declension genitive, or third declension Greek word. So that's our nominative. So, what does he do? The hero divides. And what does he divide? The wina. Now, the singular of wina would be, hopefully you can see it, yeah, you can. Winum, weenie, wine. So what are plural wines? Probably jugs of wine. Kind of like when you say wines, it could be different varieties of wines. It could be different bottles of wines. And so, the hero divides the wines, and again, that's what you need to have on your trip. And why do you not want to carry water with you? That junk will spoil. What keeps the wine from going bad? The alcohol that's in it. The stuff that kills the microbes and all those sorts of things like that. And so in the ancient world, it's so incredibly important. Because you can't trust the water source of where you've arrived. You don't know if the water there and where you're at in Carthage, and you can't even count on there being a water source. And so therefore, you carry wine with you. So the hero divides the wines, and they are the wines which good Acestes. Now Acestes is a king that on Sicily, remember when we first met them, they were leaving Sicily, and they were leaving it after the death of Aeneas' own father, Anchises. But the king of Sicily that helped him is a fellow by the name of Acestes. And so they divide, as he, the hero, the wines which good Acestes had loaded up. Onero, onerare. And this actually should be, instead of onerat, and let's see if you can see it over here, I think you can, oneraverat. And as it has this dropped out VE, remember it is what we call syncope, a syncopated form. So, erat indicates pluperfect, and it means to load. It is the verb form of onus, which is a load in itself. So, he divides those wines, which good Acestes had loaded up, then, back in when they were on Sicily, so then, Cadiz, that's the word for jar, in jars. These are, of course, the famous amphora that was ubiquitous in the ancient world, and had done so because of from in on the Trinacrian shore. Because Sicily, when you look at it, is essentially a triangle, it is often called trinacrium, which of course merely indicates the shape of it. So on the Sicilian shore, and those wines which the king Acestes had given to the ones going away. The verb eo ire, I don't know if you can see it up there. Ah, yeah, you can. That verb eo ire, I'm going to move it just slightly so you can have a better view of it. Its present active participle in the nominative looks like that right there, eanes, but the genitive and thus subsequently all of the other tenses or the other cases, that is your stem, eunt. And so do you see the eunt ibus? And so ab simply means away, the ones going away. It's substantive, and it indicates the people and soldiers of Aeneas that were leaving. So, the hero, that is what Aeneas is referred to. And again, he's already gotten meat for the men. Now he's dividing up and giving them all some wine so that they can drink. And this is where we truly see him in his leader position. He mulceo mulcere. He soothes. He calms. But soothes is better. We've seen that verb before. The accusative, myrentia pectora. Their hearts, their chest. He soothes their hearts. And they are myrentia hearts. They're saddening hearts. Dictes, with things having been said. With these words. And then we start the quotes. And he says to them, gives them a pep talk. They need it. Remember, they are defessi rerum. They're like me, tired of things, over it, essentially. But we will press on. Oh, friends, oh, buddies, for, I'm looking up, there it is. We are not ignorant, we are not inexperienced, ignorant more so, of bad things previously. And what does he mean when he says we are not ignorant of bad things previously? We've already been through some tough times. Yeah, our ships are all broken down and our grain is ruined. But you look, we've been through this kind of stuff before. We've been through tough times. Oh, men, ones, posse. From the verb patior, pati, possessum, to suffer, deponent. And here it is substantive for oh, you been, the ones having suffered. Not having been suffered, but having suffered graviora. More serious things. He's reminding them, we've been through war. This is just a car crash in the form of a shipwreck. We have been through war. Oh, guys, having suffered more serious things. God will give, Dodari Dedidatus, an end to these things also. And it is, of course, the generalized God, some God, will give an end to these things also. So, starting line 200, if we could scroll up to 200 about right here. Thank you so much. And then he goes on to talk about some of the things that they have experienced and emerged from. Y'all, and I need to find a verb that has a tis or an istis. There it is. This verb, akestis, it means to approach. From kedo, kedere, kesi, kestus. And so, here, it is another syncopated form. Y'all have approached the Scyllaean or Scyllaean madness. Rabies is a fifth declension word that means madness. That's why we call it rabies. And the dog will go mad. So y'all have approached the Scyllaean madness. In between Sicily and the toe of Italy It was thought in the ancient world that there were these two entities that would get you. And you always had to make a choice of one of them. One of them was named Scylla, a multi-headed dog-like creature that would hugely come down and bite the heck out of you and your ships and your men. The other was Charybdis, and it was a swirling whirlpool. Most famously, when Odysseus was making his travels and had to pass through that little small strait in between Sicily and the boot where they're almost touching, he chose Scylla. And that's the one you always need to go to because, yeah, you're probably going to get some of your men eaten, probably going to get some of your boat bitten out, but Charybdis, ain't no escaping for that. That's a whirlpool, and it'll suck you down to the bottom of the ocean. So he's pointing out the fact that they've been past that. Y'all have approached the Scyllaean madness, quick, and the crags sounding or resounding deeply. Let me explain to you my personal hate of all adverbs that end with US. The word penitus is an adverb, and it means deeply. I hate them. And you know why I hate adverbs that end with US? Because adverbs ain't supposed to end with US. Nouns and adjectives are supposed to end with US. And so what do you do with these? You just got to memorize them. I hate them. Y'all have approached the crags resounding deeply. Et, and, y'all. Now this verb, which is a participle here, perfect passive-looking participle, experior, experiri, expertisum. And do you know what I'm going to do? Because I don't want it to be an awkward-sounding participle. Swamos, do you know what I'm about to do? I'm going to add a verb to be to make it a periphrastic verb, just like we had talked about earlier. And so here I add estis, because our subject is y'all. Y'all have experienced, not been experienced because it's deponent, y'all have experienced the Cyclopean rocks. This is reference to a huge cyclops on Sicily by the name of Polyphemus. And so look what y'all been through. You've dealt with Scylla. You've dealt with the clashing rocks. You've dealt with Cyclopean rocks. Cyclops will pick up big boulders and throw them at you. Call back your minds, revocate animos, and send, as implied, send away your maestum timorum, your sad fear. Line 203, most famous line in the Aeneid. Forsan et haec olim meminisse juvabit. Perhaps, forsan, it will help juo juvare, with a bi. We actually had that verb back in like chapter 6, I think, of Ecce Romani, but it never appears again, so everybody always forgets it. So it means to help, juo juvare. Perhaps it will help meminisse. Memini, meminisse, like odi, odisse, like quapi, quapisse, are the three defective verbs that only appear in the perfect system. And that's why here it is a perfect infinitive. To have remembered these things also olim once upon a time or one day. So what does it mean? Perhaps it will help to have remembered these things one day. It's essentially the idea that, yeah, things are tough now, but you're going to become stronger for it, and you're going to think on these later on, and you're going to be a better person for it. We are going to be stronger, and I am meaning this absolutely truly. You're going to be a stronger student because of your experience of this. I'm going to be a stronger teacher. All in the building are going to be a stronger teacher. We're going to be a stronger administration if we make sure that we don't despair, that we don't give up, that you keep running. And it is absolute truth. It's painful at the time, but that's what he is saying. It will help to have recalled these things one day, perhaps. One day maybe this will make us better and stronger and all those things that come along with it. All right, so let's 6 more lines and call it a day. He then goes on to say, per varios casus. Now casus comes from, let me go ahead and get rid of that highlighting. There it is. Casus is not calsus. Casus comes from cado, cadere, cadi, casus. That's a fourth declension word. And remember, it means misfortune, downfall, disaster, through various misfortunes, downfalls, through so many, and that's what toke means, discrimina, disasters of things. Don't translate that as discriminations, but that's where we get it. Through so many discriminations of things, in other words, disasters, tough times, tendo tendere, present indicative. We stretch. We strive. What stretches out my muscles and bones? My tendons, which is why we have that. We stretch into Latium. That's the area of Italy they're headed. Ubi, where the fata, the fates, ostendant. If something is ostensible, it means that it's showable. Where the fates show, quietas, restful, quiet, seats. Sedes, sedis. A seat is like the seat of power in a county. The seat of power is where the government is located. So even though in, of course, Newton County, we have Mansfield, Newbern, Porterdale, Oxford, Covington is considered the county seat because it's the seat of power, because that's where the government is located and centered. And so he's saying that we're going to have, one day, the fates show quiet seats. In other words, a place we can settle down. Illic, that word means there, at that location, phos. Now if you remember, phos is an indeclinable word. It means divinely right. It almost always implies an S with it. There, at that location, it is divinely right that the accusative kingdoms of Troy resurgere, rise again. He's telling them, just like as an analogy, what always was Moses and then Aaron and the later folks always telling the Israelites as they were marching around for so long, they're like, oh, it's so bad out here, we got no food, and it's dry and hot, and we're going to die in the desert. And I don't know if you were familiar with the story. He was always telling them that he was going to take them to a land of, most guy know you know, what is it called? Canaan is the land of what? Go ahead, like it.
Milk and honey.
Milk and honey is exactly right. Tell them like it's okay. Dangling that carrot. Keep marching. I know you're hungry. I know you're tired. I know your feet hurt and you got blisters. But hey, the land of milk and honey, we're going to get there. Yeah, 40 years. At any rate, he then tells them, durate, toughen up, be durable, and servate, and save yourselves. Now, met on the end of wos doesn't mean anything at all. It just enforces it. And save yourselves is how it translates. For favoring things. For bettering things. And so he's giving his men a pep talk. He's like, hey, keep it together, guys. We've been through tougher stuff before. We did this and that was hard. We did this and that was hard. And then secondly, land of milk and honey. We're going to get there. It's the carrot he's dangling. But this is the best part of it. This is the part, the next line truly shows how much of an awesome leader he is. He, referret, remember Pharaoh, fere in Latin, in, of course, poetry especially, can mean not to carry but to say. And he says such things with his voice, please not with such a voice, talia, accusative plural neuter. Woke, ablative. If it were with such a voice, this would be a long I as the ablative singular I stem. So he says such things with his voice, que, and this is the part that's important. He, iger, sick, it means weak, sick, iger, igra, agrum, with huge concerns, with huge cares. He's got super stresses. He is freaking out. What does he do? He simulat. He pretends. He simulates. He fakes hope on his face. Vultus vultus is a word that means your expression, your countenance, your face. And he presses a deep grief in his heart. This is what makes him, in one way, a true leader, in that he is super stressed. He is super worried. He has huge concerns. He's sick about those concerns. But what does he do? He fakes hope on his face. He doesn't let it affect his men. It's kind of like, let's say I lose my job. I get sick, something happens to me, I develop some sort of debilitating disease. I'm so stressed, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to lose my house, I'm not going to be able to feed my family. I don't come home to my children and say, guys, it's a disaster. I'm on death's door, I don't have any job, we can't pay the rent, I don't know what's going to happen to us. You don't do that to your kids. You don't let your kids know that it's going to be a doom and like all bad. No, you tell your children it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. I'd be kind of like Mr. Church, the leader of the faculty. Like starting the faculty at the beginning of the year, these 3 weeks of pre-planning. It's like, all right, guys, I'm going to tell you. I mean, it sucks, and you know, all the kids are not going to learn anything. It's going to be a bad year, but you know, no! Even though he is concerned, he has stresses. He shows that it will be all right, even if you yourself are stressed, even if you yourself are worried. You don't let that seep in to the men that you are leading, to the people that you are leading. There it is, line 209. We're good. All right, who has questions?